Hi there! You're about to listen to a vintage episode of the Under the Microscope podcast. While the content is still as relevant and as interesting as when it was recorded, our webpage has changed. You can now find us at thesciencetalk.com/real-scientist-nano. Welcome to Under the Microscope. This series is brought to you by the Real Scientists Nano team. Our goal is to provide a platform where scientists can communicate their work and interact with the public. With that in mind, every week we introduce you to a scientist working in the field of materials and nanoscience, who would be curating the RealSci_Nano Twitter account. Hi everyone, today we have with us Sebastian Maehrlein, who is a group leader of the Terahertz Structural Dynamics group at the Fritz Haber Institute of the Max Planck Society in Germany. Hi Sebastian, wonderful to have you on the extended podcast. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to talk a little bit more in detail now.
Looking forward. Awesome. Let's start by understanding your scientific career so far. So please tell us about your career journey, scientific career journey so far.
All right. So I will go just a little bit through my journey to see how I came here and ended up doing the science. So I did my physics studies. So this was back in the days where we still had a German diploma. So before the Bachelor of Science program. So I did my diploma physics at the University of Constance, which is, by the way, a great place. You have the lake, you have the Alps. So lots of free time value there. And of course, I met a number of really important friends there. But besides this, you can also do really great science, even though it's maybe a little bit smaller university. You can do really good science. So they are really strong in laser physics, semiconductor physics. And that's how naturally I got interested more in nonlinear optics. What can you do with strong lasers? What can you do with invisible lasers, more in the mid-infrared or near-infrared? And actually what are interesting semiconductors, for example, to investigate. And this is how I ended up there doing my diploma thesis already on nonlinear terahertz spectroscopy. So this was on four-wave mixing, and I investigated high-temperature superconductors and narrow-gap semiconductors. So technically this was quite already challenging, but I learned really a lot from there, and basically all the lab tools that I needed, I really got there during my diploma. Then I did a small intermediate step after this, moving to Berlin to become more a little bit broader in my scope. So what I did for half a year, I attended a completely different study at Hasso-Plattner Institute in Potsdam, which is called School of Design Thinking. So what is design thinking? Basically, it sounds fancy, but it's nothing else than working in really diverse groups with diverse backgrounds, multidisciplinary, and thinking about how can we actually solve problems and where do new ideas come from. So it's more like how does creativity happen? And then having this background, actually, I thought, okay, now I'm a little bit broader in my scope. I'm not only a physicist, but now I want to dig deeper again. And so I went for my PhD to Fritz Haber Institute of the Max Planck Society in Berlin, where I went on with strong field terahertz physics. But this time I really got already into the lattice excitation. So I wanted to understand how electrons and phonons, so phonons are quantized lattice vibrations, how they are coupled. And also especially how the spin degrees are coupled, because the spins are closely related to magnetism. So the question is, can we really switch spin states or magnetic recordings on ultra-fast timescales by making use not of electronic excitation, but making use of lattice vibrations? So this was in a nutshell my PhD thesis. And then I wanted to switch a little bit to learn more about interesting material systems. So I did my postdoc at Columbia University in New York City. And there we investigated a new class of hybrid semiconductors. So the so-called lead halide perovskites, I think they've been also mentioned here already. So I wanted also to investigate these material classes and understand their actually surprising optoelectronic properties. And also this time, actually, the question, so how can lattice excitations play a role to maybe create a kind of protection mechanism to protect these charge carriers? Yeah, and after this, I got a wonderful offer to start my own group back in Berlin. Yeah, and now I'm here leading the Terahertz Structural Dynamics group, and basically now we're really thinking about which materials we can investigate, how can we drive, how can we really control lattice excitation to steer materials into the states that we want, and how can we control these properties.
Okay. All right. Wow, that's quite like the definition of the traveling scientist, so to say. That's quite an interesting work experiences you've had, especially the design thinking one. Did you want to step out of the sciences for a bit? Was that the motivation, or was it more like, okay, I do want to stay in science, but I also want to explore this design thinking, which you mentioned that working with people from diverse backgrounds, so to say. Was it more like that? That's the first question. And the second question I would like to know about is, do you think this design thinking path that you took for a bit, does that help you in your current day-to-day life as a group leader? Because I'm sure your group is also quite international and your collaborators are also quite international. So, yeah.
Sure, thanks a lot. This is really a great question. So first of all, I think we all know when we write a thesis, we are really narrowed and focused. So we really dig into one topic and we tend to forget what is still left and right. And having this feeling, I really want to take myself, instead of traveling, I wanted to take myself a little bit spare time, opening my mind again and really looking left and right. And especially this question, where do ideas come from? This is something, or how to be creative. This is something that always puzzled me. And so this was, for me, it was really perfect. And this maybe connects to the next link, to the next question, because I think now topic-wise, I can't really use the precise tools that you do for innovation projects, because we work for big companies doing innovation consulting basically. But what is important is actually getting a feeling for group dynamics, how to keep people in the boat in projects, and how to benefit from different opinions and different backgrounds, and what is the strength of putting different people together. And there I especially learned that it's really hard, but also then important to find a common language that people understand each other, understand their problems, and, as I said before, keep people in the boat. So if you lose people, it's not good. Sometimes it's good to spend a little bit more effort as a group to keep people on board, because later on in the process they will help you out, because they have a different mind, they think differently, and this might be useful later on. And this is, I think, the thing of all this group dynamics and really taking care of not only science but also on the meta level how we do science. This is something that I think I really took from the studies.
Okay. Wow. That is really interesting. That is really, really interesting. I think we need more leaders like you, group leaders like you in sciences, who think like that and who have at least a crash course, so to say, in this design thinking or something similar sort of a thing. Let's move towards more of your science, your day-to-day science now. So you did already mention what your current science is on the short podcast, but the question I have for you is, where does your current research fit in this big picture of materials or nanoscience? Because it's quite a broad field. So where does your piece fit in this big puzzle?
Yes, I try to fit it in. So the thing is that I'm not really a nanoscientist or not a material scientist in the sense that I'm building materials or building specific structures. What I want to learn is actually about the properties of this structure, and especially about the dynamic properties, because most of the design is done in a static way. You put like materials together and then you hope this material stays the same for the next hours, days, weeks, and years, hopefully. Nevertheless, if we want to use these materials, for example, as computational devices in our phones or something else, the dynamic properties are really important, especially if we have high processor rates, high switching rates. We are approaching really the time scales of picoseconds. And that's why I'm more interested not in the nano aspect, but more in the nano aspect in terms of time. And even there, nano is much too slow for me. So what we're looking at is we're really looking at picoseconds or femtoseconds. So femtoseconds is 10 to the minus 15 seconds. And these are the timescales that are actually relevant for processes that influence, for example, the conductivity or that switch semiconductors from being non-conducting to conducting and so on and so forth. So I would see myself more in studying dynamic properties, and then hopefully with my findings about the dynamic properties, for example, about the lattice, is the lattice very rigid? Are the lattice vibrations coupled or not? Is there some anharmonicity involved? And all of these questions, I hope to find new answers to this or new properties. And then maybe there's a feedback loop to the, I would call real material scientists to help them, to give them some input, some feedback, how processes work and what might be beneficial as new materials and what are the new design properties that we would wish for.
Okay. Wow. So, okay. That is very, very interesting. This field is also new for me completely because I'm a material scientist by training, but for me, what you're doing and the way you're describing it is completely new. And it sounds to me that you're involved in a lot of interesting research projects. You have been involved since you started your scientific journey, and also now as the group leader at the Max Planck, you're involved in quite a lot of interesting research projects. And I know this is a tough question before asking it. If you have to pick one research project that you're most proud of, or the most fun or quirky one, could you pick one and explain it to us in simple words in the section we call In Other Words?
This is, of course, very tough to have one, but I try to pick one which I can describe really well, and that's probably also that's why my most favorite result, because it's really tangible in a way. So where do I start? So some of these lattice modes that I described, they don't have a dipole moment. So basically, even if I have a strong light that is resonant with this mode, I cannot excite this lattice vibration because there's no electric dipole moment I could couple to with the electric field part of my light pulse. So what I have to do to excite this phonon mode is to go one step higher, use a nonlinear process from nonlinear optics. And basically, we all know this kind of modes, or many spectroscopists and material scientists know this kind of modes because these are the only Raman active modes. So this is no surprise. People do Raman spectroscopy in the visible range, and they can excite modes at a few terahertz or a few millielectron volts, few inverse centimeter, whatever your favorite units are. But the question is, of course, this must be a nonlinear process because you have a visible light and you're far off resonance of this mode. Nevertheless, you can excite it. And this is a good example how you use a nonlinear process. And what happens microscopically is that you're mixing two photons from your laser. And by mixing them, you do a kind of difference frequency process. And then the difference frequency between these two light fields oscillate exactly at the frequencies of the phonon that you're driving. And then in this sense, because it's a two photon process or two field interactions, it's suddenly allowed and you can drive this process. So far the background. So this is the usual case how people do Raman studies and maybe don't think about it at all that it's in this case, if it's an impulsive stimulated Raman scattering, so if the phonon mode oscillates, that this is a nonlinear process in a sense. Now, I had the idea during my PhD, together with my supervisor, of course. Is there an opposite? Can you also come with a frequency or an energy that is actually much lower than this mode, but you can still excite it? And so what I found out is actually in this really prototypical material, so diamond lattice is pretty easy. We know there's really a Raman active mode at 40 terahertz in this case. And now I just came with lower photon energies. So for example, with 20 terahertz, and suddenly I could excite these modes because I'm driving a sum frequency process or a kind of 2 photon absorption. And this coming from the other side, so from the lower energy side, and exciting this phonon and also steering this phonon was something new. And the cool thing is that it's not only an experimental proof of evidence, but you really have some advantages coming with lower energy fields, because you can also steer the phase of the phonon, saying basically how the, maybe this gets too deep, but you have the full phase control by your light field. You can basically shape your light field to have a specific phonon phase. And
it sounds like magic to me. Sorry, go on. I interrupted you. Go on.
No. I was thinking if I should go a little bit deeper.
But this is really cool. I mean, I understand why you picked this as the project or the research project, one of the most proud of research projects, so to say. That is really cool. You're absolutely right, because I did use Raman during my master and my PhD work as well. I never thought about it this way, that one could also do this with the diamond. That's really cool. So Sebastian, it's clear to me that you really like the research part of being a scientist. What else do you like about being a scientist?
Well, actually, there's really a number of other parts that I also really like. It's not only about getting the knowledge out of nature. It's also much more around it. So first of all, it's also, of course, always the challenging part, right? I talked to you that I'm interested in problem solving and where new ideas come from. And this is essentially also connecting to science. You have a huge problem, you're working on it. And then once you solve it or once you have a theory about it, it feels really rewarding. But even more, maybe apart from science, I really like to collaborate with people. As I said before, all this group work aspect, that you meet different people around the world, you're collaborating. It's not like you're a scientist alone in your room and you're thinking about problems. It's not at all. You're really traveling, you're meeting people, you're exchanging ideas. And this is really something that I enjoy, and also the part of being a little bit my own boss. There's of course the up and down side. I can choose whenever I work. Most of the time it's not good for my work-life balance. But this is also, I see this also as an advantage.
Okay, so the collaboration and the problem solving and this satisfaction you get after you solve an issue and you get the result that you expected.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, I can imagine that. That is really cool. So if I were to ask you, what advice would you give to the researchers who are starting out today, or what advice would you give yourself if you were to go back in time and were starting out today? Do you have some? I'm sure you have some advices to share from your experience.
Yeah, this is also a tough question, because I'm not thinking that I have the advice or being in the position of having like a perfect advice for people. Maybe more just some thoughts on that. So as I said before, this problem solving can be really rewarding, but on the other hand, sometimes it can be also really frustrating. So my advice is in over popular words, really work hard, play hard. So you have to work hard. Sometimes it's frustrating, and you have to really develop this frustration tolerance, that okay, I faced this situation, it's frustrating. I have weeks where I think I'm not getting anything. But then my advice is really keep on it, try to dig deeper. Don't be satisfied with some surface solution. Really dig down to the root of the problem And once you understand this can be extremely rewarding, and you will grow, and you will get new self-esteem from that, and so on. So this is something that I can't emphasize enough. And then the second thing is always this like career advice things. I find it sometimes a little bit weird because you always have the survivor bias that someone more senior gives you advice how he or she came to this position. And I would just say go with the flow, because there's so much choices that are really bare luck and bare chances. So whenever you see some chance for your career, or whenever you meet a person, really connect, keep the contacts up, and then maybe later on there will be a job opportunity or something like that. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and it's not depending on you and your skills mostly, but really a lot of it just being at the right time, at the right place, and meeting the right person with the right demand. So there's so many factors. So don't overthink it this way, and be spontaneous and take the opportunities and chances that will open up for sure.
Okay, that is some solid pieces of advice. These are not suggestions, I mean, come on, or lessons. These are advices for sure from your experience. This is really good, and I feel like we don't really talk about it that often. You have to grow a thick skin or this muscle towards to deal with the frustrations, because the experiments are not going to work the first time.
Yes.
If they work, you're really lucky. And also with the career advice that you mentioned, I mean, listen to people, but then also like keep in touch. And then if you don't get the opportunity that you want to get, then don't take it upon yourself. It's not. There are so many factors that have to align, so to say. So it's not that does not mean you're a bad scientist. It's just that just right place, right time. A lot of things have to align. Thank you for that. And I hope Sebastian, I hope your research experience has been wonderful so far and will continue to be wonderful in the future as well. However, if you had 3 wishes to improve your research experience, what would you ask for? And I'm not promising anything here, okay?
Yes, so I think it's been discussed for a number of times, all the issues with the publication pressure and everything that we have and that we're facing. So I think this may be not something new. What nevertheless is also now known nowadays and is now keeping growing, especially in the last weeks. Maybe you heard this hashtag Ich bin Hanna, about the problems of getting a permanent scientist position in Germany, and the working contract style in Germany and German academia. So this is really a big topic that has to improve. We need more permanent positions somewhere in the middle. You don't always have to shoot for being a big professor with 80 people working for you. I think you also, the whole society would benefit also from people leading smaller groups and being more specialized in this sense. And you need to offer permanent positions to these people. So this is one thing. And then what I would wish for, with a smiling eye, I would say there should be still some, even though we have for so many decades all these laser systems and strong lasers. I'm wishing that one day I see a ultra strong short pulse laser that is really hands off as claimed, so you switch it on and then you don't deal with it anymore. But it's all part of the journey and part of the science that you always have to deal with such issues.
Okay, so better working conditions when it comes to contracts, permanent positions for researchers than a super fancy laser. Can I just call it that, super fancy laser?
Yeah, just a hands-off laser.
Hands-off laser, that's the second one. Do you have a third wish?
Yeah, I don't know. The third one would be maybe that I would have more time of the day, like I think 36 hours per day. would be good for me to get a good work-life balance and to be also more efficient. I mean, everyone is struggling and everyone is beating themselves up trying to be more efficient. So if we just would have more time and if there would be a magic thing to be more efficient, I would be happy to take it.
All right. Okay. All three really, really important wishes. I wish I could just say, okay, snapping my fingers, and tomorrow when you wake up, Sebastian, the world is going to have a super fancy hands-off laser. All the researchers in Germany and also around the world will have more permanent positions. And you're going to be more efficient. I wish I could say that, but I would like to believe that we are working towards it at least, especially the first and the second with the hands-off laser. I guess that technology should be possible to see in our lifetimes. And with the permanent positions, I mean, we have researchers like you who are active right now. So if you have that mindset, then we have some hope for the future when it comes to better working conditions for researchers, not just in Germany, but around the world.
Yes.
So this has been wonderful, Sebastian. But before I let you go, one last question I have for you is I can't let you go without speaking about the amazing year that the world has lived through, that is 2020. Interesting, for lack of a better word, for that year. What are your learnings from the year 2020?
Okay, this is also tough, but I think as 2020 was really a game changer year also for me and in my career. I think the most important thing that I learned both personally and as society, I think we are more flexible that we thought before that we are. So taking my example, I had to move during the peak of the pandemic from New York City to Berlin. And basically, in the end, it ended up like packing all my stuff within 5 days, leaving my flat, getting rid of my furniture in 5 days. So this, and writing a paper besides this.
Of course.
So
Yes.
I think if someone told me this before, I would say it's not possible. But I think we all learned that there's so much possible, also so many Zoom meetings and so on. A lot of stuff can be online. So this is the positive part. I think we learned it. The negative part is, I think there was some society issues and some politics facing up around the world that were kind of critical in terms of politics. But on the other hand, maybe let's stick to the science part. And in this case, I would say I'm really looking forward to have more in-person meetings again, because there's lots of stuff you can do online, but online conferences are not the same. And as I mentioned before, traveling and having coffee together is really part of the journey, and especially like supervising students, it's so much more convenient for all of us to speak somewhere together face to face than just showing us measurement data on a computer screen. And maybe the biggest learning starting this new position is actually one more encouraging thought that it's really fun to work with young scientists and build up a team of young motivated people, and it's really fun to just work on a work environment where such young people have fun and where they can be productive and be good scientists.
Okay, well, on that positive note, thank you very much, Sebastian, for speaking with us. Really looking forward to having you on Real Scientist Nano. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for the invitation. It was fun talking to you. Thanks.
Thank you for listening. To know more about us, please visit our website, realscientistsnano.org, and follow us on Twitter at realsci_nano.